right, gang, welcome to Tale and Tome, a show where two bookish besties dive into the stories that have us staying up all night and obsessing over every plot twist. I'm Rowena, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Amanda. Together, we're going to unpack the magic, mayhem, and everything in between.
All right, today we will be taking you all through Onyx Storm, and we have something for everyone, I promise, whether you're a diehard fan or simply just here for the vibes.
We're going to start with our initial reactions and thoughts to the book. That being said, this episode will be full of spoilers. So if you haven't finished, come back to listen once you're done. Then we'll get a little nerdy and we'll break down plot, characters, themes, all the good stuff.
But that's not all. We're also going to revisit some of our previous predictions to see how well they held up and share some new ideas on where the story might go. Plus, we've got a few surprises in store, so grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for an epic discussion. Yay! All right, gang.
All right. Amanda, I will just ask you this to start with. How does Onyx Storm compare to the other Empyrean books for you personally?
Yeah, so my ranking, I'll give you my ranking where we are now.
Yeah.
Because we still have two more books, so these are subject to change, of course, too. But I think right now, Fourth Wing is still my number one. I really think it's still my number one, with Onyx Storm is a close second, and then Iron Flame in the third spot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I say close second because in Onyx Storm, I thought Onyx Storm was really fun to read. I anticipated it to be more of a plot development type book, and I really think it was. We got a couple things answered, but we have way more questions. But we have a lot more information too, and I think that's going to be really key for us as we think about what's coming. However, there were a couple moments where everything just felt all over the place, and we didn't really have a direction forward. Everyone just didn't know what was going on, and I think a little bit of that is because we're seeing everything from Violet's point of view, and as Violet gets information, so we learn things as she learned things, instead of being the reader and knowing everything all at once. It's really just from her perspective. Other than that, I think there's a lot that we have to resolve in the next two books, and I'm a little curious to see how some things play out. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
My order is not the same. My order is the order in which we have gotten them. It's Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, Onyx Storm. Okay. And maybe this will change after I've only read Onyx Storm the one time currently. Maybe it'll change after I read it again.
Yeah.
But I built it up a lot in my head. So I had really, really high expectations. My biggest thing with Onyx Storm from the beginning was that it didn't feel as in sync with the first two books as they did with each other, and the narration style. I felt like the first two books, it was really everything that Violet was feeling and thinking and doing, we got. And at the beginning of Onyx Storm, we didn't get that. And I know that some of it was played off as because Xaden didn't want to know, but Xaden's not our narrator. Right. Violet's our narrator. And then kind of the way that Xaden talked to Violet felt different too within their relationship. And I know that he's a Ven now, but I don't care. He still feels the same way about her.
He does. But I think it's partially because I have a little thought about this. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but we can talk more about it. I think some of it is he's changing because he's a Venin, and he has to remind himself who he is. Because there was that part where they talk about, I think it was Jack says Venin don't love, or we can't feel these things.
Right.
And so I think maybe it's a little bit of him changing the narrative in his brain, and how
he's fighting. He's fighting to overcome what his soul splintering or whatever.
I guess. Yeah. That's kind of how I took it, but I agree.
I like the world building in this, and I feel like we got a lot more world building in here than in the first two books. I would have liked it to maybe be spread out in the first two books, but we've discussed already that like this is Rebecca Yarros's first fantasy series, and so maybe she had to kind of like build it herself a little bit more once she got here. I love hot and heavy world building. If
I
there's a
think we
big
both
old
do. Yeah,
political religious structure, I'm here for it. And we got that in this
a
book.
lot of it.
But like you said, we didn't get really anything answered that we were really expecting to get answered from Fourth Wing and from Iron Flame. We just got like more questions, and the things that I felt like that everybody thought were going to give us all the answers, like finding her dad's research and all this stuff, didn't really give us actual answers.
Yeah.
So you know, it's good, and the third book of 5. So we had to have more world building, or we wouldn't have had 5 books.
I agree.
So
Yeah, I also think like we've kind of defeated our initial. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have anything to say about this. I'm just cut it out. We'll get there. I don't know where I'm going. So, all right. With that said, though, still a good book. We loved it. It was exciting. Everyone's like rally behind it.
yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun to see how that's happened and all the excitement for this. Going off that, what was your favorite moment in Onyx Storm, if you have one?
Okay, they're good. Even though I just said it's my least favorite book in the series, I still love the series, right? I think I speak for everyone who has read this book that when they get to the bookstore in Deverelli and Nanelle, the old lady that owns it, is looking at Xaden and says, "You're exactly as he described you, Dane Atos." And Mira just loses her fucking shit.
We were all Mira in that moment. It was
all of us
so
are Mira
perfect.
in that moment. Poor Dane.
Poor Xaden.
Poor Violet.
True, poor Violet. But like, oh my
all
god.
All 3 of them are just like, oh no.
Well, especially because they had that moment in Fourth Wing where like Dane kissed her. And that was in Fourth Wing, right? Or was it in Iron Flame? I can't remember.
It's in Fourth Wing right after Threshing.
Yeah, Dane kissed her and she was like, nope, friend zone. Like, this is not what I thought it would be.
Like,
I think she had that expectation that like something would happen between them as well.
But then he also at that time had the expectation, but thought that she was just going to be like okay with him rule following.
Yes.
And them like not ever actually being together. And so it was just like a very uncomfortable moment for Dane and Violet.
Yeah.
Maybe a little for Xaden, especially with his whole jealousy thing.
Yeah. That was a good book.
Which his jealousy has increased exponentially, sort of, I guess. He's been jealous of Dane the whole time. And so then he has jealous moments in here with Holden too. And so like it was just hilarious.
There were so many great moments in this book.
My other 2 are when Andarna is holding the panther, just like ready to eat that snack. She's like, "Can I eat this, please?"
I love it when she's like, "My jaw's getting tired. Hurry up."
And then my like favorite Xaden moment is when they're in Hadatis and his mom and all of the people who are wise and want them to make all these wise decisions are telling him that he should draw up a marriage contract with Kat for a few years so that they can produce a royal heir. And he's like, "All right, yeah, draw me up a marriage contract." And they're like, "For how long?" And he's like, "Forever." And Violet is like, "What?" Because they can't mind speak because they don't have their magic. And he's like, Oh, just for the paperwork, it's Soren Gale with two R's. And
Oh,
everybody's like,
Zayden. Zayden, Zayden, Zayden.
he's just
Yeah,
like hanging out. Those are my top three.
those are all really great moments.
How about
Yeah,
you?
the like Zayden moment with Violet's name was like such a mic drop moment.
That
I
was so good.
loved it because you're sitting there reading, you're just like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, why is he agreeing
Which
to
is what
this?
she's thinking too.
Right? Yeah, like we're like I'm like so in tune with what Violet's feeling in this moment, and I'm just like, what the fuck is he? Like, what is
I
he
when
playing at?
when I was reading it, I was like, he's not talking about Cat.
Yeah.
But then it's Soren Gale with two R's. I was just like, snaps.
Boom.
Good
Yeah.
job,
Mic
sir.
drop, baby.
Hilarious.
Yeah. I just so oh my gosh, Rebecca Yarros fed us with this book. Like it was the narration style was different. I think there was also so much more like comedic relief or like sarcastic moments too. Um and I think we saw a lot in kind of like our a lot of that in our a lot of our supporting characters, and so it was nice to kind of have like expansion and growth of those characters too. Like oh my gosh, Riddick.
So good.
He's so like he's always been kind of like dorky, funny, sarcastic, but this like oh, he was so
He's
great.
like always our Chandler Bing, right?
Yes.
He's always our comedic relief.
Yeah.
But since he goes with them on Quest Squad, we
Squad.
get we get more of him because in the first two books, it's like we've taken Violet out of her squad,
Yeah.
and now we have Riddick back with her.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I love their friendship and I love how like
good.
um when he finds out about Zayden being a Venin, he's just like, let's chat. We told you not to keep secrets from us. Like,
Right.
if you feel like you need to keep secrets from us, you're doing something wrong and you need to talk to us. So I love that kind of camaraderie between them. Favorite moments for me, man. I like the ones that you liked. Um,
They're good.
yeah, I don't know if I have any. I didn't write anything down for this one because I couldn't come up with any. So yeah, no, nothing new. Just the sass from everybody.
Well, instead,
Yeah.
can you rate for me your favorite Zaydens, like in each book? Zayden's
Oh,
personality and actions. Who's
okay.
first? Who's your fave? They're all the same person, but he
Right.
changes.
He changes a lot throughout these
His
books.
character arc is more like a whoosh.
Yeah. So it's funny. It actually follows my ranking of the books. So Fourth Wing Zayden is my favorite. Then ooh, I would say Onyx Storm Zayden comes second, and Iron Flame would maybe be third, but I feel like Onyx Storm and Iron Flame Zayden are more neck and neck. But Fourth Wing Zayden, he's top tier. He
Great.
is mysterious. He's way more morally gray, and you really have that like lovely slow burn enemies to lovers in Fourth Wing that like I think he just does so well, or they do so well. Their tension was so good, and I just ate it up.
I agree. My order for this goes Fourth Wing, Onyx Storm, Iron Flame. And
Okay.
it's because the beginning of Iron Flame, all I can think about when Zayden talks is the song Sorry by Justin Bieber. That's all I got. And now I feel like in Onyx Storm, since he's a Venom now, we're transitioning back to this like almost enemies to lovers trope again,
Yeah,
right? And he's
absolutely.
like becoming more morally gray. And I want to clarify that my husband is not like evil, but because this makes me sound really toxic, but for the sake of the trope,
Yes.
right? The like morally grayness of him, you can't just take your enemies to lovers and give them like get them together and then they're just like magically happy for 4 out of 5 books.
Right. We need something.
It just doesn't work. You have to have some sort of a hiccup. He's got to still have something wrong with him, or the romance plot just doesn't plot.
Yeah.
It's already been resolved. So I think that we set him up in Onyx Storm to have that tension again as we go on.
We absolutely do. Again, these are all subject to change as
Yes,
these books continue, of course.
absolutely.
But yeah, first book, Xaden Ryerson, top tier for me. Iron Flame, not so much.
He's also not around as much in Iron Flame.
Yeah.
I might take this back. I might change my mind.
Okay.
I think I'm switching. I'm saying Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, Onyx Storm. All of my points are still valid that I just said. But Iron Flame is when he's stationed at Samara and we have the bathing chamber scene. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Look.
Mm-hmm.
Look.
Fair.
He's like warding doors so that no one can get in but her. He's like letting her pull people through her bedroom door, but nobody can get through his bedroom door except for her. We're
That's fair.
writing
That's
cute
fair.
little letters and leaving them for her.
He
We love
ups his
this.
game a lot in Iron Flame to try and address her concerns of
well,
him
because
being
he
honest and
realizes that
forthcoming.
he's in love with her.
Yeah.
But he's still leading a rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I see that. I still stick with my.
Fair. It's fair.
Yeah. Because he now is quote unquote evil because he's a Venin. But this entire book, I feel like in Onyx Storm, he's been still doing the same, kind of the same things as you were describing in Iron Flame, but much more to the nth degree because he's giving her Tyrandor and making sure she's comfortable leaving and know stuff, and he's really setting her up for their future, whatever that may look like, and solidifying it. The plot of the book and what happened is sort of what I expected to an extent. So we all know that I was an Isle Kingdom stan for this. I was set, this is where they're going, this is what they're doing. They are going to find Andarner's Den, they're going to be looking for a cure for Xaden, all of which they did. We're going to get Papa Sorrengail's research. Did not anticipate that being in the Isle Kingdoms, though. That was a bit much. I thought it was I know we had the manuscript that was at Basgiath, but I didn't expect there to be more in Deverelli. But I love that part. That being said, I thought the cliffhanger for this book would be them finding Andarner's breed right at the very end, and that would have been the end. I didn't really think that there was going to be another epic battle, especially between Theo and Violet and the crew. I didn't think that was going to happen, especially where Theo died, because she was just kind of introduced to.
Right.
So it makes me wonder kind of who our villain of the next books are going to be. And of course, Vinin in general, and maybe Bearwyn, that Maven that Xaden reports to now, whatever weird dynamics they have going on, but I don't know.
The thing that threw me off from what I expected was it was the end of the book was basically the same as the end of Iron Flame, right? We have one of them, either Xaden or Violet, fighting specifically one-on-one against a Venin Maven.
Yep.
But this does make sense because we do know from some of these interviews that she has done previously that apparently she originally wrote Iron Flame to end with Violet turning Venin, not Xaden.
Right.
And so we should probably have expected this to happen, because what that means is that in her plot, they were interchangeable.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, one of them had to actually defeat their maven, and the other one didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of them had to, like, stay Venin, basically.
Yeah.
So maybe I should have expected that. It just, I thought that since that was essentially the way that Iron Flame ended, that was not going to happen in this book at all.
Yeah. And we didn't really make any progress on finding a cure for Xaden, which was also a large,
Literally none.
like, it's such a large portion of this book. And I know it's like kind of
And
veiled under like finding Andarna's breed and like no one really knows
except
what they're doing, but
except not, because like her whole, like, the book, the actual back cover of the book has her thing, her "I will not die today," and it's crossed out and it says "I will save him." It's
I will
right
save him.
there. And she didn't do it.
No, she didn't.
And
Well,
it was like,
I mean,
they didn't focus on it. It's like we knew that she was looking for it, but it's like no one else said anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
Tell me how you feel.
it's a different topic. I was gonna transition into a rabbit hole.
We can go down a rabbit hole.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
I think.
Stay tuned for later in the episode, guys.
Okay.
Oh man. Okay.
We're gonna talk about some character development.
Yeah. I think we have a lot to talk about with this. This might be one of our most
We might
in-depth sections of this episode. There are
I would, if you're okay with it, I would like to start with Violet's medical condition. To just address
just
that.
Violet in general. Like before we jump down that,
Let's talk about Violet. Let's get her chronic illness out of the way.
Out of the way. Let's do it. Go on in, bro.
Violet has a condition that in our world is known as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So it's a connective tissue disorder. And Rebecca Yarros has it. She is like so forthcoming about her medical struggles, and it's really nice to see that. So Ehlers-Danlos is a connective tissue disorder that can manifest in several different ways because it is a genetic mutation, but it can be on like one of or a combination of several different genes. The way it usually manifests is just in this like joint laxity sphere. And what happens when your joints are pathologically lax is that they dislocate a lot more frequently. You have way more pain. And the management for it is generally physical therapy and strengthening the tissue around it to hold the joints in place and really keep the joints like consistent, working the way that they need to, which is basically what Imogen has been helping Violet with.
Yeah, so we hear from Imogen in Fourth Wing that that's exactly the point of her and Violet training together, is so that she can strengthen the muscles around her joints that she has problems with. So it makes sense.
And this is why Violet's shoulder dislocates so easily. It's why her kneecaps are always dislocating and she's having to keep her knees wrapped, is to keep her patella stabilized, why her back hurts. And so we get those symptoms in Fourth Wing and Iron Flame throughout, right? As she's going through all of her training at Basgiath. But in Onyx Storm, we get this like cluster of symptoms that we haven't heard as much of from her. We get a little bit of her kind of getting dizzy every once in a while when she's at school, but we haven't gotten as many of these what are visceral symptoms. So the dizziness, lightheadedness, like seeing dark spots in her vision, some nausea, stuff like that. And there's been some discussion on the internet that people think she's pregnant, but there's a condition called POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, that's really highly correlated clinically in these patients that have Ehlers-Danlos, specifically in adolescent women, which Violet would qualify as an adolescent. She's like 20,
Right.
21.
Yeah.
Um, and they're really highly correlated. And so what happens in POTS is you get these symptoms of that lightheadedness, nausea, blurring of your vision, fainting, stuff like that. And it's caused by an actual like significant elevation in your heart rate with changes in your blood pressure and in your position.
Which makes sense
Um,
because in this book, Violet is doing so much more
they're
physical activity. They're
flying.
flying more. That she's just like pushing herself so much more in this book. We hear so many times her talking about, well, if I'm not doing this and this and this, I'm sleeping. And it's like at the
Right.
end of her day, she's always just falling into bed just from pure exhaustion.
Exactly. Additionally, we've taken her off the continent and put her on the Isle Kingdoms, which we know are much, much hotter. She talks about that a lot. And so, one of the things that can make POTS symptoms worse is dehydration and being overheated. So, she's on the back of her dragon for like actual days at a time instead of hours that she's used to. And then you have to consider the effect of the positioning of them like taking off and landing and stuff like that when she's exhausted and she's dehydrated. So,
Yeah. So yeah, I hear and I see why some folks would get the idea that she could maybe be pregnant. Totally valid theory. I think I saw some clips where Rebecca Yaros addressed this at one of her tour events.
yeah,
Where was that
it
at the
was the
St.
one
Louis
in St.
one?
Louis.
Okay, so Rowena went
Um,
to the Rebecca Yaros tour event in St. Louis the other night, and she's gonna sprinkle in some details about what we heard there, what she heard there, in relation to
yes.
this theory and a couple other theories and things that we'll talk about throughout the rest of the episode.
So, additionally to just like the clinical manifestation of Violet's illness, one of the things that we love about Rebecca Yaros and authors like her that write this genre is the consistent theme of consent between parties. In Fourth Wing, they have a rushed discussion, but it's there
Yep.
of their birth control methods before they have sex. Rebecca Yarros specified that if there was ever to be a change in that status, it would have to be discussed as part of consent.
Mm-hmm.
So at the Q&A at the event, someone submitted a question and it was like, should we expect any Zayden babies? And she looked taken aback. She was like, and like paused and was like, I mean, never say never about anything,
Right.
but Violet would more than likely not want to bring a child into such an unstable environment and a world that's really scary. Additionally, this detail about consent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just
Yeah.
pots, guys.
Yeah, I think that what she says pretty much nix that theory, at least at this point. At least what happens in
Right.
this book. Like she said, never say
Correct.
never, see, but I think it's nixed.
I would say that unless we get some sort of an epilogue,
Yeah.
we're probably not going to get any Violet Zayden babies.
Not
So,
yet. Yeah. That's fair.
what more about Violet do we want to talk about? Let's
I
continue on.
I loved Violet's growth here in this book. Partially, she's like coming into her own and figuring out who she is, what she wants to stand for. She's getting all this information, and everything's like unstable and crazy. And she's just like really becoming a leader and stepping up for like what she believes is right. I also think, I don't want to say this is the only time, but it's kind of the first time that we're seeing her like throwing everything into Zayden. Like she's always had this kind of like hesitancy about him and like, can I
Yeah.
trust him? Can I not trust him? He has all these secrets. And we see her kind of get rid of that mentality, which I think is a huge growth in immaturity and like how you approach love and deal with everything. Like we're not going to know everything about our partners, but we love our
Right.
partners. We trust that we can get through whatever we find out about them. And we see that with her of just like everything is for Zayden and figuring out how to save him, how to like make things kind of better for him and be there for him. And I love that growth for her and for them.
Yeah.
And I think it just shows how they're maturing kind of throughout
Yeah.
the series.
I think to piggyback off of Violet maturing, we see it in their plan when she goes to confront Theophany. And it's not her idea to do this. She has to be advised by people who are older and more mature than her, i.e., Zayden and Brennan,
Yeah.
that her tendency towards self-sacrificing behavior isn't actually helpful. It's just immature.
Yeah.
And so we see, she has, if things are going to go at all well, she has to stick to a tactical plan
Mm-hmm.
when they're fighting this battle. And that cannot involve her just like running off to save someone else when it's really going to mess up the actual strategy.
Right.
And so I think she's mature enough to actually listen to them and take their advice and say, you know more about this than I do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she's in the moment of fighting Theophany thinks that she's going to run off and either go to Drathis or go back to the cliffs of Drowler and try to save someone
Mm-hmm.
else. And she has to sit there and say, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I think that maturity is really, it's something we needed from her for her to be
Absolutely.
effective.
And I think the fact that she actually listened to them and took their advice and actively
Mhm.
did those things, and like we see her like almost, I don't want to say struggling with it, but like she's having this internal dialogue of like, no, I need to stay here. Brennan said one objective. I have to stick to my one objective, and that's to do this. And we see her kind of go back and forth with that. And I love that she stuck with it and it worked out, right? Like
Right.
for their
Sort
objective.
of.
Their objective, right? For their objective, it worked out. But again, that's kind of what she needs to realize is she can't be there all the time. She can't be doing
Right.
everything all the time. And I think that's why we get these different POV chapters too at the end of
Mhm.
the book. So we have like sight into what's happening besides Violet's point of view.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Anything else with Violet specifically that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. Did you
Okay.
have anything?
No, I want to talk about Bodhi though.
Okay, let's talk about Bodhi.
So Bodhi, like up until this point, has been kind of this just like real side character.
Hmm.
We don't know a ton about him. We just know that he's like everywhere Zayden is. We learned in Iron Flame what his signet is, which is dialing back people's emotion or signets.
Yeah.
We like got the really cute moment in Iron Flame with Bodhi giving Violet his flight jacket so that she can run off to Samara, which triggers my whole favorite scene in that whole book where Zayden's jealous of somebody else's flight jacket.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the extent of us with Bodhi. It's really Bodhi being like, please don't do anything stupid.
Yeah.
Which I think he needed someone to say that to him in this book. But
Yeah.
in this book, we get a bunch of scenes of people comparing Bodhi to Zayden
Zayden himself doing the same thing
and
too.
Zayden doing the same thing. And Zayden continuously reminding Bodhi that he's second in line to the throne of Tyrandor or the dukehood, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
And Bodhi tells him over and over, he's like, I don't want that.
Well, he
The
says at one point the plan was you would take over, I would be
and
the
I would
writer.
be a writer.
Yeah.
Correct. And so we know that was probably the plan from the beginning of their childhood,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Zayden wasn't actually supposed to go into the Riders Quadrant. His dad wanted him to go into the infantry like every other Duke of Arisha.
Yeah.
And so Bodhi was always planning on going into the Riders Quadrant,
Yeah.
and Zayden wasn't. And so we kind of got, their whole lives got turned around, obviously, with the whole rebellion and the
Right. Yeah.
punishment. Nobody can do anything about that. But Bodhi's obviously still kind of holding on to some like desire for that to still be what's happening.
Hmm.
And whereas we previously just got very little of Bodhi doing anything, we get a lot of comparison. Even like at one point they're on the flight field and Violet is like talking to Zayden and looking at Bodhi and she's like, maybe I chose the wrong. And he goes, don't finish that sentence.
Yeah.
Which is funny,
Hmm.
right? But it just like really solidifies this idea that Bodhi probably feels really, really secondary to Zayden and like he's not as important and that he's really just like living in Zayden's shadow.
Hmm.
And I think that this is really interesting and that it has manifested in Bodhi's signet because Bodhi's main signet is turning down other people's power. And so what he like wants at his core is he like almost wishes he could turn down Zayden's power so that he's not so much in Zayden's shadow.
Hmm.
And so I think it's just really, really interesting. And I think the reason that Rebecca Yarros has developed Bodhi's character arc in this book in particular is because Bodhi is the one at the end that is Zayden's new brother, i.e., is now a Venin. And I think that he's done it because this is his opportunity that he's finally gotten to be more powerful than Zayden and to kind of like get out from under his thumb and out of his shadow and actually like make a name for himself
Hmm.
as he could rise either through the Venin ranks or just having more power to do what he wants.
No, I think that is a really interesting take. I'm torn on who I think Zayden's new brother is at the end.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, I can't decide. I think the way that you describe it in terms of Bodhi, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I almost think Rebecca Yarros is really setting the stage for it to be that, which makes me question if that is actually what it is or not. She's leaving breadcrumbs, and I'm like, should I eat these breadcrumbs or should I not? So I'm
I
not sure yet, but there is something that happens. Like, the end of those or the end of this book is just so fast paced. We have all the different POVs, and it's so hard keeping track of all of these people and where they're at. There
and
is a
there's a lot of
scene, there's
details.
a lot of details. There's that scene where I forget which chapter it's in. I can't remember if it's Imogen or Ree's chapter where they see Bodhi on the field and he's hunched over, I think throwing up or something. And people have speculated that that's actually him, like
Drawing
experiencing
power.
burnout and like drawing power from the
Yeah.
earth. Especially since he found out that his signet doesn't work on Venom. Like we see that with
Yeah.
Theo, that it doesn't work. So if he is kind of like, you know, looking for power, looking for something to do, like build up and help and fight, the only way he can do that is,
With his second signet.
which he said he didn't have.
No,
Um,
he said it playfully. He said it because there were other people around.
but no one else knows that Zayden has a second signet.
But Bodhi would know that all the other marked ones have second signets,
I saw something that
which
Rebecca
makes
Yarrow
me
said.
wonder if Zayden has a third signet.
Well, we'll get there, but we'll get there. I saw something that Rebecca Yarrow said that Violet is the only one that knows about Zayden's second signet because it's a death sentence. So
Correct.
when Bodhi
And he
says,
told her that.
yeah, but when Bodhi says, I don't have a second signet just like Zayden, we know, and what we like he doesn't know that Xaden has a second one. So
Right, because even Taryn didn't know.
yeah.
Because that's why he was so pissed at Scale. Was because she didn't even tell him. No one knew. So like Taryn like corroborated that Violet's the only one who knows.
Yeah. So
But
we don't know though what his second signet is, if he has one. We don't know if all the marked ones have a second signet, how that works. We don't know. We just know that some do. And we know that the dragons knew that this was a potential possibility when the marked ones came to the quadrant. I can't remember because I think Xaden said that like the dragons were like looking for them, or that's why they were chosen, or that's why he was I can't remember exactly what happened. But sorry, I'm going on a tangent. That's not related to what we're talking about.
I think that Bodhi has a second signet because the other marked ones that we've seen so far also have them.
Yeah.
Sloane is still new enough that we don't know about her. And Sloane like trusts Violet more now, but I don't know that she trusts her enough that she would tell her that at this point.
Yeah.
But
what do you think Bodhi's second signet is?
Oh, I don't freaking know.
Like, yeah. Is it something that's not useful for battle? Like, who knows?
No, I think it's something far more useful than the one that he has shown everyone in the quadrant he has, just like everybody else, right? So, like, Imogen's primary signet, we'll call them primary, secondary signets.
Yeah.
Her primary signet that everybody in the quadrant knows about is her ability to erase memories. While this is really, really useful, it would probably keep her in more of an intelligence role and out of a battlefield role.
Absolutely.
Which would increase her safety once she got out of the quadrant.
Absolutely.
Her second signet is stone wielding, which is dope.
Is it earth wielding? Like, is it? I want to know how far it goes. It's so cool. That like scene was so cool.
And that is a dope ass battle signet. Okay. Sure. The reason and then Garrick, we know, is a distance walker. So he kept his more powerful signet secret.
Yeah.
The only reason Xaden didn't keep his shadows a secret, right, is because being an intrinsic is a death sentence.
Right.
I think that if he had had an intrinsic signet like Dane's or like Imogen's, he would have told them that one and kept his shadows a secret. Because he makes this comment in Fourth Wing after Andarna stops time that the most powerful weapon we have is like power that people don't know, secret powers or whatever, however he words it. And so I think that Bodhi has to have another really cool signet.
I hope so.
And I think that Xaden has to either have that comment makes me think he must have a third signet, right? Because Bodhi doesn't know that Xaden's an intrinsic. We just clarified that.
Yep.
But why would he make that weird comment of like, I don't have a second signet just like Xaden? Unless there was something weird in their runes when they got dragon fired that made them not have one.
Bodhi?
I don't know. Bodhi and Xaden, if it's like a family thing.
Yeah.
Would be my only option for why Bodhi wouldn't have a second signet. But I think that otherwise he would just be like, no. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I think it goes back to we don't know a lot about Bodhi and how he interacts. Like we're learning a lot about him in this book, so we don't really know how truthful he'll be with Violet.
I think the way that he said that, he meant, yes, I have a second signet, but I can't tell you.
Well, it's also like how Garrick was like, I never said I was a distance walker, as he's about to distance walk.
As he just freaking distance walked, right.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. So yeah, I see a lot of things and I see a lot of thoughts, and I'm not convinced that Bodhi is Zayden's new brother. I'm just not 100% definitive that's what I want to say yet. So I've already read Onyx Storm twice. I want to read it again and see if something else pulls at me for it. But can we also talk about Ponchek in this? Sorry, we're kind of going off, but like at the end of this thing, like, so he's the person that has been feeding the Venin all of this information all the
I'm
time.
not, so, I'm not like shocked that he is sympathetic to them because he kind of gives a rough vibe,
Yeah.
from the beginning. But he's not the one that I was like expecting.
No, for sure. There are other candidates that I thought would be
Harsh,
it.
partially because like in Onyx Storm, we don't even like talk to him. He's mentioned like twice. He just kind of like isn't really even around that much. And so I'm like, like obviously Colonel Atos would have been a really good guess, but he would be a terrible spy because
Right.
no one trusts him.
Right. But
It
yes, he's the
just
perfect one.
it felt really out of the blue. I think that Markham would have been a really good one,
Hmm.
because he is shady as fuck. But he also, as a scribe, part of his job is sending and receiving information. And
So
so it
he's
would have
like the
been,
perfect person.
he's like the perfect person because he's sending and receiving information anyway. So he could intercept information and send it elsewhere.
Yep.
Like nobody would be suspicious if he's sending missives. And so I did feel like Panchuk being the one who like was the insider was kind of out of the blue.
Yeah.
But I don't like, I mean, I didn't trust him from the beginning because he's
Yeah.
kind of,
I will
but
say there still could be more than just him. Like, do we
well,
really,
duh.
yeah, like, do we really think he was the only one
No.
there? So, yeah, and maybe some of our theories will still come true on who is, sympathetic to this cause. I want to talk about Venin when we get more into our world building section. So, I'm putting this pin in there about that, and we'll talk more about it. But I want to keep talking about character arcs and um a couple things with that.
Previously, we have discussed, and you are actually the one that put this in my brain,
Yes.
that maybe Brennan is not trustworthy.
Yeah.
Do you still think that?
So I don't know. And I'll explain. I think there are some sus things about Brennan, especially the rune shaped scar on his hand. I really want to know more about that. We really need to know more about that. We really don't get a ton from him in this book, but we do find out that he's trying to help Min Zayden. Um, and to me, that kind of took me off my sus Brennan train, at least fully. But I still wouldn't be surprised if something happens with him. And I'll caveat this with the fact that we don't know a lot about Brennan's past, especially with Naolin, if that's going to come into play.
Also, why didn't we get any information about him in this book?
Okay, no, for real. That's where I was going. Again, with just like, we just didn't get the information. It doesn't mean it's not real, doesn't mean that it won't still come. But I don't know if what happened in this book really changes my mind or not, because we didn't really have a lot of him. You know, we have
Right.
again, we have him trying to help Zayden, which like awesome, perfect, yay, love that. But why? Does that mean he tried to help Naolin? If Naolin did become a Vinin, like we don't know. Presumably, maybe I don't know. I'm just rambling now, so I'm going to stop.
I feel like I have played devil's advocate about Brennan
Yeah.
a decent amount, but I never didn't trust Brennan.
Mm-hmm.
Um the worst thing that Brennan did obviously was letting his family believe he was dead for 6 years.
And maybe that is just the sus thing that he did, and like we don't have a lot of information on why he did that besides what he believed in his values and what he thought, and maybe that's just like the worst part.
And
And since everything is from Violet, maybe we're picking up on
her bias,
her bias and
right? Because
hesitation.
she was really hurt by that. But from my perspective, I think that Brennan did that more as like if he could have somehow told Mira and Violet he was alive, he and their dad, without General Sorengale finding out, and without like everyone in Navarre finding out because everybody knew who he was, I think he would have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we see this, throughout the book, that he's really loyal to the rebellion and he's really loyal to his sisters. Like every time Violet almost dies a lot.
Yeah.
And he's always right there. He's always ready to mend her.
Yeah.
He like could sabotage them so many times and he doesn't.
Yeah.
And so, are there some things about him we don't know? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But there are things about like literally everyone in this book we don't know except Violet because we're in her brain.
Right. And I'll say, as you were talking through this, I also remember like in this book, Brennan goes back to using Sorengale as
He
his
does.
last name.
Right.
And I
Because
think that
everybody
was a
knows
huge,
who he is
yeah,
now
yeah. And I also think that was like like a huge step for him, like establishing trust with maybe
with
Mira and
Mira.
Violet again,
Yeah.
too.
Um, and then, yeah, we do learn that he tries to mend Zayden, or is trying to find a cure for Zayden. And we can talk more about that when we get to the world building and talk about the Venin, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if he was sus, I don't think he would be doing any of this stuff.
Yeah.
He clearly
He has
has
way more
had.
important things to do.
Yes. And if he was on the side of the Venin, he wouldn't be on the side of the revolution. He would have just gone back to Navarre.
Right.
So, and just been a Venin like everybody else in the Navarrian upper ranks,
Right.
apparently.
Apparently.
So,
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we're off our Brennan sus train, but let us
okay.
know what you guys think, if
Let us know.
you think that's true or not, or if we should still be concerned about him and
I
why.
will never get fully on that train. I'll watch it go by.
That's fine.
I'll wave at you guys.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Dane? Because you have been really vocal about your hatred for Dane.
Dane eyes here. Atos? Fed.
Tell us.
Wow. I was not expecting that. I really wasn't sure what Dane's role would be. Honestly, I thought as he like chose the rebellion side or revolutionary side, I kind of thought he would fade into the background a little bit. Like I thought maybe that was his like redemption arc. Um
He just like goes away.
yeah, like he's there for certain reasons because like he's smart. He was raised with Violet. Like Violet's dad also like trained him to be not to be a scribe, but like in scribe ways. And so we see how Asher, Sorengale kind of like raised Dane to help Violet in their quest. So I thought he would just stay in his little like supporting role, happy over there. But I'm so happy for him and Sloane in this moment. And you brought this up first, that they were the enemies to lovers trope that we
It's
needed.
like a half of a moment, guys. It's not that you didn't miss something huge.
No, we did.
It's everyone's missing something huge because Violet literally in this scene, when they're in Zayden's class,
Mhm.
is like, did I just see what I think I saw?
She
Sort
did.
of a thing. And it really is just like Dane and Sloane having this like really short, quippy moment.
And
Uh,
it's like it's perfect because he's like helping her like come to terms and like come to terms with her power and how to use it and
right,
how to reframe it. Because Sloane so far thinks that she just brings death and that there's
correct.
nothing good about her signet, and that's why she doesn't want to train it, why she doesn't want to hone it. And we get a little bit of that in this book between her and Dane. And this moment was like him really stepping into his like leadership role and like helping her realize, you're siphoning the power from me to Brennan, you're giving life to Mira, because that's what they're trying to do in that moment is mend Mira. And it was just this perfect moment where like Sloane was just like, no, I'm gonna hurt you, like I don't want to do this. And he was like, Gods, don't I know it? And it's like, why do you say that, sir? Because you were kind
And
of hurt. And the eyes
it,
here, like it was just them, it was their moment. And I
yes.
think while it's a moment, I think it could be the foundation for something.
I also want to clarify that I was not referencing this moment.
Oh, sorry.
There is a previous moment. That was a lovely moment. I agree with you.
Okay.
There's a previous moment at Basgiath when Zayden is teaching his class, and the first years show up, and Sloane and the first years want to help with whatever research is going on.
Oh, I remember this moment now. I'm so
And
sorry. I was stuck on that one because it was like, mwah, I love that scene. Sorry.
Violet is like, did I just see Sloane basically checking Dane out, like to herself in her brain? And they had this like weird little flirty thing. And she was like, and she literally mentally is like, I'm going to think about that later.
I remember
I
that
don't
now.
have time for this right now.
Yeah.
But the reason this is such a good enemies to lovers trope is that Dane is responsible for Liam's death. It like 100%.
Yeah.
Everybody blames Dane for Liam's death,
Everyone,
including Sloane.
yeah.
And so, and also at our RY event, Rebecca, somebody asked, I think the girl interviewing her, who was also an author,
Mhm.
asked her what her favorite like romantasy trope is, and she said enemies to lovers. So
Ugh.
here it
Like I
is. We
said.
also have another potential for enemies to lovers with Mira and Drake.
Oh my God. We do.
It's happening. It has to. She set us up for it in Iron Flame when they're all when they all meet Kat, fucking bitch, and Serena.
Mm-hmm.
And um they like Serena and Mira have this little banter that like their cousin Drake would love Mira, and she was like, well, good thing I don't fuck flyers.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
Love
So
that.
clearly that has to happen.
That's gonna happen. Yeah. And I think we hear in this book that Violet doesn't really ever remember Mira being with anybody or like having
Correct.
anyone. So I
She's
think
like never actually been in a relationship.
so I think if we're gonna get a Mira relationship, I think Drake is a good one. And then they'll have broccoli.
Little broccoli. I
Yes.
also want you guys to know that Rebecca Yaros did not give us specific confirmation at this event, but somebody asked about broccoli, and she said, well, broccoli is with Drake. And as far as we know, Drake is fine. As
Broccoli's
far as
fine.
Violet knows, Drake is
Yeah.
fine.
I also
You know.
posted something the other day from Rebecca Yaros where she made a post talking about how I think Onyx Storm was on the top seller. I can't remember exactly what. She has a hashtag at the end that's
Okay.
hashtag broccoli is safe. So this is me saying Rebecca has let us know broccoli is safe, you guys.
Don't worry.
Don't worry. Broccoli will be back. Hopefully, we'll hope. I don't know for sure. I hope broccoli is back. So,
Okay. So we just talked about Dane and Sloan
mhm.
and Mira and Drake.
Riddick and
Who
Atrum.
else?
Riddick and Atrum. I'm so happy Riddick was on Quest Squad because
So good.
we only see the relationships of riders and their dragon from Violet and Zayden's point of view. And I'm not gonna lie, they're both like pretty like grumpy, kind of they're not very fun, sarcastic, and Riddick has just always been this like we love
Excuse
it.
me.
I love it. I love it.
DeGale is the funniest.
No, she is. I do love it. I mean,
But we get none of her in this book.
No, we really don't, which is very unfortunate. But Riddick and Atrum take like goofy, fun best friends to like another level. Like when they're like splashing around together in the water, I'm just like, this is so wholesome. What? These are relationships. Because can you
They're
imagine
literally
Taryn and
pranking each
Violet?
other.
I know, but can you imagine Taryn and Violet doing that? I can't.
No.
Right? So it's just so fun. It's just so
Karen
funny.
takes himself far too
I
seriously.
do. And that's why I love this because we get more information about the dragons. And I love dragons. I love dragons in books. I just love dragons. And so I love seeing how they're different. And we get so much more of that. The dragons are so secretive in the Empyrean series. And I understand why. And I'm hoping we get more detail about it. But just to see like kind of a goofy, funny one that's not Andarna being an adolescent
Right.
is fun.
And I think it like adds to the like magic of the dragons choosing their riders at threshing.
Yeah.
Right? That they can actually tell the riders' personalities when they go through a presentation and then when they're going through it threshing.
Yeah.
And they're like, that one.
Yeah.
Because poor Atrum has been in this dull Empyrean.
Probably in the
Nobody
Vale.
wants to do pranks with him, and everybody's so serious.
The
And
itching powder.
he just needed Riddick
Yeah. So
to
I love
fill
that.
his soul.
I love that.
So we love this.
I love
Okay.
it so much.
Let's talk about another dragon.
Are we going
Let's
to talk about
it?
Andarna?
We have to talk about it.
We have to talk about Andarna. So we found the Irids. We
Yes.
learned a little bit about them. And
Really, they found us.
They did find us. We succeeded in our mission only because they found us. And it sounds like it was purposeful. That like it didn't seem like the quest squad was going to find them unless they wanted to be found. Didn't really go how we were expecting it. The Irids
Not well.
Not well. The Irids kind of suck.
Kind of jerks.
They're kind of jerks. Kind of have this.
All right, friends, we're going to stop there for today. We had too much to say, so we are going to pick up the rest of this conversation in our next episode. See you later.
Bye.